So when it comes to planning ahead, I believe that planning ahead in preaching is so important because I have discovered that the more prepared you are, the more spontaneous you can be. And this is just me, but I've been doing it 30 years. I've never had an ulcer. I'm never nervous or anxious about what am I going to say on Sunday, because that's all planned well ahead. You may not be wired exactly the same as I am. I just know that planning ahead has contributed essentially to good emotional health over a number of decades. I do work well in advance. We're recording this in late August, and just yesterday I prepared a message for November the 7th. And so I'm typically 2 to 2.5 months ahead. I recommend everybody works this far ahead. I do believe that the farther ahead that you can get, the better you will feel, the more emotional stability that you will have. I guess I shouldn't recommend that everybody is quite as OCD as I am, but I think almost everybody can work farther ahead than you do. And as you're asking about, well, how do you get there? How did I get there? Just a couple of hints. Years and years and years ago, when I was graduating seminary and moving to the very first church that I ever served, I wrote about 4 sermons before I ever left Kentucky to move to North Carolina. And so I started out a month ahead. And you may have already realized, oh, I graduated Bible school or seminary and I didn't have 4 weeks ahead. What do I do now? A couple of hints that I would suggest. You all have weeks you don't preach, whether there's a guest, whether you just give people a break from you. I would recommend in that week you don't preach, you still prepare a message. And that's just one more that goes in the hopper. Yeah, once you get ahead, it does take discipline to stay ahead. And one of the main ways I've continued to stay ahead through all those years is, and we have a team at Good Shepherd, so I kind of preach less than I used to, not a lot less, but like recently, I went 3 consecutive weeks without preaching, which is the first time I've ever done that in ministry, but one of our staff pastors really needed that experience and that exposure. But those 3 weeks that he preached, I still prepared a message for a couple of months in advance. And you may wonder, well, how if you're working on a sermon for November, how are you going to preach a sermon in August? And again, all I can do is say what I do, and it's very particular to me, but it may bless you. Every morning, Monday through Saturday, for the sermon that I'm fixing to preach that Sunday, I'll pull it out and I'll begin the process of internalizing it, which, involves rehearsing it. And so I get that out of the way, like by 8 o'clock in the morning during the week. I've already sort of rehearsed, internalized what I'm going to be preaching the next Sunday. And then it's really not much on my mind the rest of the day. And so the rest of the day, as I can work it in the middle of other appointments, is when I'm doing the sermon spade work for the message that I'll be ultimately writing for a couple months ahead. One other way to get ahead is I'm just never not thinking about preaching. And that might strike you as unhealthy. I feel like it works for me, but every time I hear something random, I'm like, that might preach. For example, I just saw an ad, and at the end of the ad, it said terms and conditions. And I was like, that's a sermon series, terms and conditions. It'll be a series on grace, because our terms and conditions for salvation are so different from what the world says. But I just know, I saw an ad, jotted it down, somewhere along the line, you'll have a sermon series called Terms and Conditions, and it'll be about the saving grace of Jesus.